Hi everyone, Professor Gustin here, and we're still in the Chemistry of Life, and section 2.3 says list the 4 classes of organic molecules found in cells. The 4 classes of organic molecules are the carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And I'm pretty sure you've heard of some of those because we eat a lot of those, but they also contribute to the structure and function of our bodies. How do we know a molecule is organic? Well, it contains carbon and hydrogen. And we're going to look at some molecules and you're going to be able to recognize just by looking at their molecular structure if they're organic molecules. I threw in the word macromolecule here because a lot of books or a lot of resources that you use will say, what are the 4 major groups of macromolecules? Macro means big. And so the organic molecules are these large molecules in the human body. A lot of molecules are a lot smaller, so organic molecules tend to be relatively large, and so a lot of will reference that to them as the macromolecules instead of the 4 major groups of organic molecules. So it's just another term for the same thing. And because these molecules are big, they generally are composed of subunits. So we're still in the 4 classes of organic molecules. So we said organic molecules contain carbon and hydrogen, but if you don't contain carbon and hydrogen, you are considered an inorganic molecule. So all molecules are organic or inorganic. And so if we look at this, here's a little table. Oh, I put just some pictures. You know, when we think of organic, we think of living things. When we think of inorganic, we think of non-living things like rocks, and that holds up pretty well. And even the things that don't look alive, that are organic, things like fuel, like gas and oil, are inorganic. They came from living things. So organic molecules have some origin in living organisms. Here's some examples of some molecules. Remember we said, here's one, 7 carbons, 7 hydrogens, a nitrogen, and an oxygen. So all of these are organic molecules because they have carbon and hydrogen. They can have other things too. They don't have to, but they can. So these are all organic molecules. These are all inorganic molecules. Calcium chloride, hydrogen sulfide, you know, things like that. And so you can see they don't have carbon and hydrogen. If I go back to one of the earlier pictures we looked at, this butane has carbon and hydrogen, so it is organic. Carbon dioxide only has carbon, so it's inorganic. Water only has hydrogen, doesn't have carbon, so it's inorganic. You have to have carbon and hydrogen to be organic, and you can have other things in addition. So carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, you're still organic. The next outcome I have is describe the processes by which the organic molecules are assembled and disassembled. So one of the things I want you to remember is these organic molecules are big molecules, and most organic molecules are made of smaller subunits that are hooked together. And so here's some molecules, and remember we said sometimes you can draw molecules and just draw little angles where the carbons are. So here's a carbon-containing molecule. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. There's 6 little corners there. And then there's an OH here and an OH there. And so this is an organic molecule. And here's another organic molecule that looks a whole lot like it. And in order to assemble organic molecules, there's a chemical reaction called a dehydration synthesis. And you can pick this apart. We all know hydration has to do with water. Dehydration is losing water. We get dehydrated, we're losing water. Synthesis is to make. So dehydration synthesis is a chemical reaction where we take smaller molecules and we link them together to make larger molecules. And here it says we're going to link them together to make macromolecules, bigger molecules. Remember we said organic molecules tend to be big. So dehydration synthesis is a really common chemical reaction in living organisms that use smaller molecules to make bigger molecules. And look right here, there's a 2 H's and an O kind of close together. And so inside of cells, there's a chemical reaction where those H's and O are kind of pulled off as water, dehydration, and they create a bond between the two molecules. So now these two molecules are hooked together and we have a bigger molecule. Dehydration synthesis is when you have two molecules and you lose a water and you hook the molecules together to make one bigger molecule. Hydrolysis is the opposite. Hydro is water. Lysis is to break lyse. And so here we have this big molecule, and in some cells can actually add a water back and break those bonds. And so we return it to the 2 units you started with. So hydrolysis, using water to break down molecules. So we have this bigger molecule. There's a chemical reaction. That's what that means. There's a chemical reaction that's going to break that molecule into smaller subunits. And this should make, you should be able to relate to this a little bit, because here we go. What do? We eat food. We eat a lot of food. But our cells, we can't put cheeseburgers into our cells or into our blood to fuel us. We've got to break that food down, the molecules in that food down into smaller units. So this is what's happening. We're having a lot of hydrolysis reactions to break down our food. But then we need to take that food and take that energy and those molecules and build new molecules to create our bodies. So we do this. We go from smaller molecules to bigger molecules. So that'll kind of pop up. That idea will resurface here and there, I think. So if you go to your book, in fact, you can just go to your textbook, like when you're in the, when you go to McGraw-Hill Connect, over on the left, there's a little list there, and your book is there. And you can just click on going into your book. But the other way that you can be in your book is click on your lecture assignment. And so there's a lecture assignment for this week linked on Brightspace, and you'll get there and you'll get right to that same page where all your McGraw-Hill Connect things are. And you'll see it. Check your, you can go to the reading. So you're in the lecture assignment. Instead of going to the questions, you're going to go to the reading. And go to the check your progress section, 2.3, and there's sometimes questions there. I always list which questions I think you should be able to answer in the study guides. So you should be able to answer these 3, and the answers are right there. You can click on it and it will tell you the answers. So you should be able to do those. So I'm going to stop right here, and we'll start up again in section 2.4.